Shalom, all praises to Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai Bahashem Akakwarash. Double honors to the elder apostles, the bishops, and the elders of GMS who rules well. Peace and salutations to the elect. My name is Ainan. The title of this video is Nero 47 says Cuba can't have oil from Russia. Right, and ultimately, basically Cuba needs oil. They're going through blackouts and things like that. They don't have fuel, right? They're stopping flights, and Russia was sending oil to Cuba because Nero 47, Donald Trump, he lifted the sanctions on Russian oil, right? Because the world is in a state of a crisis right now, turmoil. There's a lot going on, it's a lot happening around the world regarding energy. you know, and Cuba is one of those places, that needs it. But this devil said no, that Russia could not, um, bring them oil, even though the oils are already on the way. I'm gonna grab this real quick. So Cuba suffers another blackout because they were already having a blackout, but this I guess this is Havana now, right? So that whole area over there is going through problems. It says Cuban power grid suffers blackout again. The prior blackout occurred in Cuba on March 16th. Is now March 31st, right? 21st. Sorry. It says the national power grid system suffered the blackout for the third time during 1 month. The Cuban state power company informed. The complete outage of the national grid system occurred at 6:32 p.m. All right, the Havana branch of the National Power Company said on its Telegram channel. Right, the prior blackout occurred in Cuba on March 16th. So they're having, basically in and out power outages, right, which just points to a dying system, basically. All right, U.S. says Cuba is prohibited from taking Russian oil as two tankers head to island. And we're going to get into it. We're going to read about it. It says the U.S. Treasury Department has said Cuba won't be allowed to take delivery of Russian crude, even as the fuel-starved island appears poised to receive two tankers carrying oil and gas. Right, so Russia was sending that oil over there, and I even seen a video earlier while I was putting this together that Russia is trying to fight that. Basically, America, saying like, why can't we send oil? Well, we'll check it out. This is Isaiah 10:1. It says, "What sorrow awaits the unjust judges, and those who issue unfair laws." Now, this is the NLT. All right, Isaiah 10:1. What sorrow awaits the unjust judges and those who issue unfair laws? They deprive the poor of justice and deny the rights of the needy among my people. Right, because the Cubans are tribe of Manasseh. All right, and what this is going to also is Jacob's trouble, which I got that pulled up. Right, these are our people, right? The Israelites, the 12 tribes, and these devils, they do exactly what the scripture is saying here. Right. For Russia to be trying to send oil over there, and these devils here in America to just say no. All right, when the whole world is basically struggling. Anyway, read this again. Isaiah 10:1. What sorrow awaits the unjust judges and those who issue unfair laws? They deprive the poor of justice and deny the rights of the needy among my people. They prey on widows and take advantage of orphans. What will you do when I punish you, when I send disaster upon you from a distant land? Right now, distant land is coming from Russia. All right. To whom will you turn for help? Where will your treasures be safe? You will stumble along as prisoners or lie among the dead. But even then, the Lord Yahweh Bashmawashai's anger will not be satisfied. His fist is still poised to strike. All right. So the Most High Yahweh Bashmawashai got it out, for these devils. All right. Indignation forever. All right, I'm trying to think about Amos. This is Amos 1:6. It says, "Thus said the Lord Yahweh Bashmawashai, for 3 transgressions of Gaza and for 4 I will not turn away the punishment thereof, because they carried away captive the whole captivity to deliver them up to Edom. All right, hold on. Just that's not what I want. It's like Amos 1 and 11. All right, it says, "Thus said the Lord Yahweh Bashmi Shai, for three transgressions of Edom, and for four I will not turn away the punishment thereof, because he did pursue his brother with the sword, and did cast off all pity, and his anger did tear perpetually, and he kept his wrath forever." All right. So the Most High Yahweh Bashmi Shai is not turning away the punishment of Edom. All right, let me because I'm thinking about a different precept that's not this one. Let me see if I can search it up real quick. Maybe I can find it. Bear with me. All right, so no, what I was thinking about is not what I was looking for. All right, but the Most High Yahweh Bashmi, the Most High Yahweh Bashmi Shah is not going to turn away the punishment from Edom. All right, so they will get dealt with. All right, and they're issuing unfair laws, right, and taking the rights of the needy among my people, and that's exactly what's happening over here in Cuba with uh, you know Nero 47 denying Cuba of this oil that they desperately need, right? It says U.S. says Cuba is prohibited from taking Russian oil as two tankers head to island. All right. Key points: the U.S. Treasury Department has made clear that Cuba is not allowed to take delivery of Russian crude. The warning comes at a time when two tankers carrying Russian oil and gas are thought to be on their way to Havana. Right, and I've seen that too. You know, so now this is new to me right here with Trump denying that. Right, said the fuel-starved Caribbean island is facing its biggest test since the collapse of the Soviet Union under a U.S. oil blockade. Right, and that's why I got these scriptures lined up right here. Right now, I read this one. It says Jeremiah 30:6. It says, "Ask ye now and see whether a man do travail with child. Wherefore do I see every man with his hands on his loins, as a woman in travail, and all faces are turned into peltings." It says, "Alas, for that day is great, so that none is like it. It is even a time of Jacob's trouble, right? But he shall be saved out of it. And the he that shall be saved out of it is the elect of our people." All right. But it is the time of Jacob's trouble. And this crisis that Cuba is going through is coming to America soon. All right, America is about to go through pretty much the same situation with the oil. Donald Trump released like 42 million barrels of oil of the 172 or 74 million barrels he released from the reserves, but America uses about 20 million barrels a day. So that's 2 days worth of oil, right? That the president has just released. And that is over here. Let me see if I can get it. Right, because these NATO and EU, they all came together, with the head, and they released some of their reserves. I believe Japan did it before anybody even said anything, because that's how dire the situation is. Right, so U.S. releases first 42.5 million of the 172 million barrels of oil from its strategic reserves. Says the Department of Energy expects the companies that receive the oil to replenish it by a total of 55 million barrels. Says the United States has allocated the first 42 million barrels of crude oil from the strategic petroleum reserves to oil companies out of a planned total of 172 million barrels, according to a statement posted on the U.S. Department of Energy's website. The document states that the United States has begun the first phase of releasing, the 42 million barrels of oil from its strategic reserves. Deliveries began on Friday, right? Today, Saturday. It says the Department of Energy expects the companies that receive oil from the strategic reserve in the first stage to replenish it by a total of 55 million barrels. Trying to understand what they're saying here. So I don't really fully understand what this is saying. It says Department of Energy expects the companies that receive oil from the strategic reserves in the first stage to replenish it by a total of 55 million barrels. Right. So this is like, is I don't know if they're saying that these companies are going to replenish this. When I guess when the time is needed, replenish, fill something up again. All right. So, we'll see. I'll see. I'll keep watch, and see what they talking about. But it don't make no sense right now. It says on March 12th, the Department of Energy announced that the U.S. administration will release a total of 172 million barrels from the strategic national reserves over 120 days. Which, like I said, they use 20 million barrels a day. They released it. They released 40. You know, so we'll see how it works out, but it's not looking too good. You know, that's why they're releasing the oil. And it's not looking too good for Cuba at all. All right. It says the U.S. Treasury Department has said Cuba won't be allowed to take delivery of Russian crude, even as the fuel starved island appears posed to receive two tankers carrying oil and gas. In a general license published Thursday, the Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control added Cuba to a list of countries that would be blocked from transactions involving the sale, delivery, or offloading of crude or petroleum products that originate from Russia. The U.S. had temporarily authorized the purchase of Russian oil stranded at sea last week as part of an effort to stabilize energy markets during the U.S. And Israeli led war on Iran. A short term measure suspended sanctions that were first imposed on Moscow following its full scale invasion of Ukraine. The update comes as maritime intelligence providers have been tracking two tankers carrying Russian oil and gas heading toward Cuba. Beset by blackouts and a worsening economic crisis under a U.S. oil blockade, the communist run Caribbean island is currently facing its biggest test since the collapse of the Soviet Union. And this test is coming, to America, right, for the tribes here in America, right? It says President Donald Trump, who we say is Nero, we call him Nero 47. President Donald Trump said earlier in the week that he thinks he'll have the honor of taking Havana in some form. And I have a video for that. It says Russia, which has been allied to Cuba for decades, has sharply criticized the Trump administration's fuel blockade and pledged to provide the country with necessary support, including financial aid. All right, Cuba's Vice Foreign Minister Carlos told reporters at a press conference on Friday in Havana that the political system of Cuba is not up for negotiations. And of course, neither the president nor the position of any official in Cuba is subject to negotiations with the United States. So basically, Russia is trying to help Cuba, right? And, the cruel Lord, Nero 47, is denying that, right? So there's, basically problems there. This is Daniel 12 and 1. It says, and at that time shall Michael stand up, right? This is the archangel Michael, right? It says, and at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince, which standeth for the children of thy people, right? And there shall be time of trouble, such as never was since there was a nation, even to that same time. And at that time, thy people shall be delivered, everyone that is found, everyone that shall be found written in the book, right? So that's the elect of our people, right? Because 2/3 of our people will die and suffer, all right? So that time of trouble is increasing, basically. Things are being put into place around the world for this collapse to, basically, worldwide. The whole world right now is suffering, right? Some people are feeling it more than others, but it's definitely, happening. And it's going to start hitting America, right? We can already see that the prices rising every day. It's going up 10 cents, 20 cents in fuel, right? And that's for everything. Everyone's had to spend money on fuel. The hospitals, you see TSA at the airports and all of that is already causing problems. Now you about not to have fuel anyway, and they're gonna be able to keep this war and all that going because shit, once everything shuts down here, no one driving because they're gonna use all that oil, that they got for their military, uh, and all of that. All right. This is Habakkuk 2 and 5. It says, yeah, also because he transgressed by wine, he is a proud man. Neither keepeth that home, who enlarges his desire as hell, and is as death. It cannot be satisfied, but gathereth unto him all nations, and heapeth unto him all people. Right? So that's what Nero 47 is trying to do, right? He's trying to basically take Cuba, right? He took Venezuela for the resources, at least, and we'll see what he's trying to do with Cuba. I haven't heard anything about what Cuba got over there. Right? It says, shall not all these take but parable against him, and a taunting proverb against him, and say, woe to him that increaseth that which is not his, how long? And to him that lays himself with thick clay. Right? So the nations are, waking up saying, whoa, right? Are you increasing that which is not yours? And they just said that Cuba is a long-lasting ally, right, of Russia. Right? And we understand that these are going to bump head, the Medes, right? And basically Babylon, right? The revised Roman Empire. The Medes is going to bump head with USA. And this is just another problem, that's making a problem between the two. All right. Well, Russia and America, because this is another ally. Venezuela was an ally. And, Trump went over there and took it over, basically. They were still sending oil to Venezuela, or however they, whatever they was doing. But Trump was out here, capturing the tankers, that Russia was sending. And now Russia is sending oil again to Cuba. I don't know if they stopped doing the whole Venezuela thing, but now they're trying to send it to Cuba, and Trump is saying no. So we'll see what happens. Play a little bit of this.
President Trump said, quote, I do believe I will be having the honor of taking Cuba.
I do believe I'll be having the honor of taking Cuba. That'd be good honor. It's a big honor.
Taking Cuba.
Taking Cuba in some form, yeah. Taking Cuba. I mean, whether I free it, take it, I think I can do anything I want with it.
What is your reaction to some of the rhetoric that we've heard from the President of the United States?
Well, during the last 3 months, almost every day, President Trump or Secretary of State Marco Rubio said something like this: friendly takeover, we are negotiating, we are not negotiating, we are ready to bomb and destroy everything. And for us, we have been our position is clear crystal. Our president announced last Friday that we are recently starting a dialogue between official of the Cuban government and official of the U.S. government based on equal footing, respect of sovereignty, respect of independence, and respect of not interference in internal affairs.
At this moment, what is the best outcome for you, for Cuba, from those talks? What do you hope comes out of it?
As we also said, we are as part of this dialogue, we are identifying the main issues where we have difference. So once we identify those issues, we are in a position to find solutions for those different. And at the same time, we are in a position also to identify areas where we can cooperate in benefit of mutual part, because usually people talk that a conversation between Cuba and the U.S. is only beneficial for Cuba, and it is not. It's beneficial for both parts, like we proved in the past.
You talked about what's on the table and what isn't. So we had the Secretary of State saying Cuba has to put new people in charge. Is Cuba willing to make changes to senior leadership to appease the United States?
Not at all. As I told you, this is the only people that has the right to elect our leadership is the Cuban people. So no one will come to tell us you have to do this or to that in this regard, So it is part of, we are not asking the U.S. that they have to change their leadership. So it's an issue of independence, we are an independent country and no one can tell us what we can do in this regard. This is something that we have to get by ourselves.
Your president said this earlier this week. Any external aggressor will encounter una resistencia inexpugnable, an indomitable resistance. Your job at the UN is to explain to the world the policies of your government. What does an indomitable resistance from Cuba look like?
That means that we are ready for any scenarios. We really want to have this dialogue. It is not a new position of the Cuban government. It is a very long-standing position of the Cuban government that we consider that the best option for both parties is to have a different kind of relation, So, and we are open to talk about everything. We are not telling that we can talk about everything.
All right, so I just want to play a little bit of that. I found the scripture that I was looking for, regarding the fact that these devils, did this, which is the Malachi 1 and 4. All right, so I'm going to read this again, and pretty much that's it. It says Isaiah 10 and 1, it says, what sorrow, NLT, Isaiah 10 and 1, what sorrow awaits the unjust judges and those who issue unfair laws? They deprive the poor of justice and deny the rights of the needy among my people. They prey on widows and take advantage of orphans. All right, and that's exactly what's happening over there to Manasseh, right? The Cubans, right? With them not being able to receive the oil because, and I want to play that video next too, that Russia is trying to bring. It says, what will you do when I punish you, when I send disaster upon you from a distant land? To whom will you turn for help? Where will your treasures be? You will stumble along as prisoners or lie among the dead. But even then, the Lord's anger will not be satisfied. His fist is still poised to strike, right? And what I wanted to grab off of this was Malachi 1 and 4. I'll get in the NLT. It says Malachi 1 and 4, Esau's descendants and Edom may say, we have been shattered, but we will rebuild the ruins. But the Lord Yahweh, Bashmel of Heaven's armies, replies, they may try to rebuild, but I will demolish them again. Their country will be known as the land of wickedness, and their people will be called the people with whom the Lord Yahweh Bashmel is forever angry. All right. So this is what scripture. I'm gonna grab it in KJV also, Malachi 1 and 4. It says, whereas Edom saith, we are impoverished, but we will return and build the desolate places. Thus said the Lord Yahweh Bashmel of hosts, they shall build, but I will throw down, and they shall call them the border of wickedness, and the people against whom the Lord Yahweh Bashmel have indignation forever. All right. For righteous anger, right, against these devils forever, for their wickedness, everything they have done. So I want to play a little bit, just pretty much play this whole thing, I guess.
2 Russian tankers are en route to Cuba in an attempt to bypass US sanctions as one of the worst energy crises in modern history grips the Caribbean nation. Experts note Moscow might be trying to strengthen its influence in the Western Hemisphere after the capture of Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela.
The crisis in Cuba is intensifying. Multiple aid ships arriving from Mexico and Europe carrying much needed food and medicine, both in short supply because of the U.S. embargo. But what the country really needs is oil. And now 2 Russian tankers are en route to the island. At a hearing on Thursday, the head of the U.S. Southern Command dismissed the idea that the shipment could be a game changer and said it might not even reach its destination.
I don't think it's going to deliver any. If it did, it wouldn't have the impact at scale. So that's the only event I'm tracking.
Top intelligence officials say it's part of Moscow's new strategy to reassert itself in the Western Hemisphere, following the arrest of former Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro, a close Russian ally.
Russia likely wants to expand its current security and diplomatic ties with Cuba.
The Treasury Department responded Thursday saying under U.S. sanctions, the oil cannot be offloaded in Cuba. It's part of President Trump's maximum pressure campaign, who spoke about, quote, taking Cuba earlier in the week. And now Democrats on Capitol Hill are asking the administration to tone down the tough talk.
While both Cuba and Venezuela are repressive regimes, they pose no immediate threat to the United States.
And many Cubans themselves doubt there will be an American invasion, though they also say change could be coming soon.
The Americans can say whatever they want. It's the Cuban people who decide what happens.
The Russian tankers are expected to reach Cuba in about a week.
So we'll see. I'll keep watch, and we'll see what happens with that situation. The prophets are always watching. All right. And, Lord willing, we'll edify from the lesson. All right. The U.S. says Cuba is prohibited from taking Russian oil as 2 tankers head to island. All right. Shalom to the Ophir elect, which consists of men, women, and children. Shalom.